Hey guys, Tom Barclay here, just doing another video after Fabio Paratici has come back in an official capacity at Tottenham. He is co-sporting director alongside Johan Lange, who's been promoted from technical director. This is something that wasn't unexpected. If anything, I think I remember writing back in May that Paratici was expected to come back in an official capacity following a period of working as a consultant. The only thing that made a few people, including myself, sort of hesitate over that was when Daniel Levy left, because Levy was the one who brought him in the first place, was known to be a big ally of Paratici, and once he left you wondered if it might change. But no, Spurs have brought him back in this co-sporting director role, and obviously this comes after his 2.5-year ban in football has come to an end. And that was the reason in the first place that Paratici left the club. So if you remember, he was hired back in 2021, I think it was July, but ended up resigning in April 2023. And that followed after being accused by the Italian Football Federation of financial malpractice at Juventus, his former club Juventus. He was one of 11 people charged over this situation, which basically was surrounding inflating transfer fees for accounting purposes. Paratici at the time put in a plea deal, although that didn't actually include any admission of guilt or finding of guilt and any acceptance of liability, but he put in a plea deal and he was given this 30-month ban, which was, as I say, handed down by the Italian Football Federation, but was also extended by FIFA and acknowledged by UEFA, recognised by UEFA. And that was why he was out of football for so long. He did still work as a consultant, as he did for Tottenham, and has been doing for many, many months. And the last few months, and definitely since the transfer window, he's understood to be heavily involved in picking Ange Postecoglou's successor, which obviously turned out to be Thomas Frank. And now he's back in a official capacity. He's done an interview alongside Johan Lange on the Tottenham website, as has Chief Executive Vinay Venkatesham, explaining their thinking. I think the main thing from Paratici's interview is just how thankful he is, not only to the Lewis family, Venkatesham and Lange, but also specifically to the fans, Tottenham fans, who he said have been showing him the love throughout his time, obviously not being able to work in an official capacity at Spurs, and that was probably the main takeaway from that, and how excited he is for this particular position, working together with Lange. I think the Vinay Venkatesham interview is probably a bit more revealing over how this is going to work, having two people in effectively one position. But he also does make a brief mention of obviously the challenges, as Vinay puts it, of the last couple of years of let's be honest, not a particularly ideal situation. This ban, which doesn't paint anyone in a good light. He said it's been a really challenging personal 2 years for Fabio, and he's delighted to be back in football and at Spurs. So this co-sporting director role, along with Lange, who's obviously been promoted, is interesting. You think normally sporting director would just be one person. I think Newcastle have just appointed Ross Wilson, former Nottingham Forest sporting director, as theirs. But the way Tottenham see it is the remit now for a sporting director is so wide-ranging and vast and broad that having two people fill that role, which is not unheard of. In fact, Thomas Frank dealt with that specifically at Brentford before, so he's well used to it, was seen as a good idea, particularly in the way they feel that Lange's skill set and Paratici's skill set complement each other. They have different strengths. I mean, Lange is particularly well known for his excellence with data analysis. Paratici known as a bit more of an old school talent spotter, I suppose. And it was interesting hearing Venkatesham outline the specifics, the specific focuses the two men will have in these roles. So Lange will be very focused on scouting, on performance, on football insights, on performance analysis and the academy, while Paratici will be more specifically working on players, the transfer window, loans and pathways. But they will work together on everything, and specifically on squad planning and player recommendations for Thomas Frank's squad. Frank himself, as I said, is known to has worked under this kind of structure before at Brentford. He spoke, Venkatesham spoke about how Frank was very happy and on board with this whole setup, and referenced that working under this similar kind of structure at Brentford, and how excited he is for the future. I asked Frank a couple of weeks ago, you might remember if you watched the press conference, about what it's been like working with Paratici, and he said he had a good working relationship with him, so he is now back in that formal capacity. With having two people here in this particular role, there is obviously the possibility for disagreement over various issues, whether that can lead to tension. You never know. But Venkatesham sort of addressed that by saying he's basically happy with healthy debate, but he encourages differing opinions, and feels that there are so many big decisions that are going to be made going forward to get Tottenham back to where they want to be. That having more minds, football sort of elite minds come together to make those decisions will lead to better decisions and fewer mistakes. And he underlined why these decisions have been taken is a sign of the commitment of the Lewis family, surrounding over their ownership of Tottenham. Obviously in this period where we've had a talk of takeovers or investment elsewhere, they're the ones who seem to be, the message relentlessly has been how 100% committed, they don't want to sell. Obviously just put another 100 million into the coffers effectively, for the managerial team to use it there as they see fit. How much of that will go towards new transfers, we'll see. I did a video yesterday, if you haven't seen, about Antoine Semenyo. I think be a wonderful signing. Has actually got a release clause in his contract, not sure how much it is, but definitely gives potential suitors a boost in trying to get him from Bournemouth, and I think he'd be really, really fitting for Spurs. He's just what they need on the left. Yes, there are other clubs, I know Liverpool being mentioned, but they've got some fantastic players like Gakpo already wide left. Man United as well has been talked about, but they've just signed Cunha, who's sort of deployed on that left side of that front three. I think Semenyo, Tottenham is just wide open there for a player like him to really come into Frank's side and take it on to new heights. But let's see what happens. So I suppose back to this Paratici, sort of two things here really, isn't it? It's whether we think two chefs will spoil the broth, or whether it will make it an even better recipe, better ingredients working together. And I do think, from speaking to people about the two men, Paratici and Lange, I agree with what Venkatesham says about their different skill sets and how they could potentially complement each other quite well. Paratici, by his own admission in that video, is a very passionate and emotional guy. He can be very loud and quite domineering kind of personality, which can be very useful. I think Levy found that quite useful, having him in that position. I think Lange's more of a quieter sort of observer, but his ability to focus on data analysis is really, really useful in the modern football world. And I think together they've got kind of, if you think of Paratici, this might be a bit reductive, but to a certain extent Paratici more of the old school talent spotter, and Lange more of a new school way of thinking. Together it could work in theory quite well. The other thing really is the sort of negative side really of rehiring Paratici, given what he's been through, given the bad headlines that have been generated from being banned for so long. And do Spurs really want to be associated with someone with that kind of history? As I said, it's been sort of explained that his plea deal was apparently mainly to get through this period and move on with his life effectively, rather than making any admission of guilt. But nonetheless, the ban is there. It wasn't only just handed down by the Italian Football Federation, it was upheld by the UEFA, extended by FIFA, or recognised by UEFA rather. And that's going to be effectively on his rap sheet, whatever happens going forward. So that's something that Spurs have had to look at. They've had to accept that's going to come with the territory if they're going to rehire Paratici, and they've decided to do that. His record generally in signing players has been very good, I think. I mean, Kulusevski is the probably standout one. I think he was involved in Pape Sarr, Bentancur, Romero. There aren't all positive ones. Galini being a specific bad choice, really. And he actually came up in our recent draft episode of the Tottenham Way, which you might enjoy watching if you go onto the Tottenham Way pod YouTube channel. That's our latest podcast. It's a bit of fun during the international break, looking at getting the other three chaps, George, Marcus, and Tom Allnut, to pick their three teams of the best players from the Daniel Levy era. Galini, but we also did a bit on the worst signings, and Galini was in there. Brian Hill, I believe, was a Paratici signing as well. So it's not like he struck gold every time, but I do think there were some really good signings. So purely from that perspective, he's a shrewd operator. It's just whether you think it's worth the sort of negative headlines by association of hiring him. Spurs clearly feel it's worth it. They're the ones who sort of deal with him on a regular basis. They found him useful, clearly, in the consultancy period. And they just probably hope to move on from that. But there will definitely be a few references in tomorrow's papers and today's website articles after rehiring him. They'll expect that. Now it's on to him to, I guess, be squeaky clean going forward at Tottenham and deliver some more of those excellent signings that I've just referenced that really can get Spurs to back where they want to be. But let me know your thoughts, guys. What do you make of it? Do you think it's a good idea to bring Paratici back? How do you see it working with this co-sporting director situation with Lange? Does it actually make complete sense given their different profiles of character, their different strengths as sort of football administrators to a certain extent? Or do you see sort of issues further down the line when a decision has to be made and there perhaps might be disagreement between the two of them? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Cheers, guys.